Alright, skill 17 is finding some difference, product, and quotient of rational expressions, which kind of more or less means you have basic fraction operations with variables thrown in, and you want to do the math. So first one is dividing two fractions. Before we begin with anything else, so we want to change that to multiplying the reciprocal. So this is going to be x squared minus 3x. That stays the same. The bottom stays as x plus 4. The second fraction, write it as the reciprocal, so the x squared minus x minus 20 goes on top, and the 5x minus 15 goes in the bottom. And now before you can simplify anything in the top or bottom of that fraction, they must be factors. So what I noticed with x squared minus 3x is although it's x squared, there's only two terms, it's a common factor of x. So I can rewrite the top of that fraction as x times the quantity x minus 3. It's kind of like reverse distributor property. X plus 4, no common factors there, leave it as it is. X squared minus x minus 20, those three terms don't have a common factor, all three. So if it factors, it's going to be two of these binomials. X squared is going to be x times x. I can get minus 20 by doing 5 and 4, and I want minus x. If I do minus 5 and plus 4, that works out. 5x minus 15 is a common factor of 5 in there, and I do x minus 3. And now I want to cross out common factors, one on the top, one on the bottom of the fractions, to simplify it. So I notice I have an x minus 3 here as a factor and x minus 3 there. So anything divided by itself leaves a 1 for a placeholder. This x plus 4 on top and x plus 4 on the bottom both simplify, leaving a 1 for a placeholder. And all I have on top of the fraction over here is an x and an x minus 5. So that's my numerator. And my denominator is a 1, 1, and a 5 all multiplied together, which is 5. So that is the simplest form of that original dividing problem. The second one is subtracting two fractions. And when you subtract fractions, you must have a common denominator. X plus 3 and x minus 2 are different denominators, and they have no common factors. So my common denominator is going to be the product of both of them. So I want to rewrite each of these fractions with this denominator. Both x plus 3 and x plus or x minus 2 multiplied together. So to create that from the first fraction, I have x plus 3 here. I must take the bottom of this fraction times x minus 2 and the top of this fraction times x minus 2. So I'm taking the top, it's 2 times x minus 2. I just want to rewrite it so I have the same denominator for that first fraction. The second fraction already had x minus 2, but I want x plus 3 times x minus 2. So I'll take the bottom times x plus 3, and likewise the top times x plus 3. So the top of that fraction becomes 6 times the quantity x plus 3. So now my work is simplify the tops of those fractions, subtract them over that common denominator. So I have 2 times the quantity x minus 2 minus 6 times the quantity x plus 3 over my common denominator, and then my job is to simplify this as much as I can. The top of that fraction, 2 times x minus 2 is going to be 2x minus 4, minus 6 times x is minus 6x, and minus 6 times 3 is minus 18. And then my common denominator I'll just recopy, because I mostly want to simplify the numerator. I'm okay to leave the denominator as these two multiplied together. The top of that fraction, 2x minus 6x, is minus 4x. And minus 4 and minus 18 is minus 22. So that's the numerator over my common denominator of x plus 3, x minus 2. And that's it. So I got a common denominator. I simplified the numerators over that common denominator. That's the solution. Alright, here are two problems for you to try. So, work on these two and pause the video. When you're done, watch the rest and check your accuracy. Alright, I'm assuming that you have these two problems done. The first one, I noticed it's a multiplying problem, so no reciprocal, no denominators have to be common. Our only job is to factor everything we can and cross out common factors to simplify it. X squared minus 25, that's a difference of two squares, so that's going to factor into these two parentheses. There's no other common factor there. One of them is x plus 5, one of them is x minus 5. Those kind of stand out because 25 is a square, it's 5 squared. 3x is 3 times x, no factoring there. 12x squared, is two things multiplied, no common factors there at all, and x plus 5 is simply nothing in common there, no factoring, x plus 5 is it. So now common factors to simplify. X plus 5 on top, x plus 5 on the bottom can both be divided by x plus 5 and leave a 1 for a placeholder. 12 is really 3 times 4. So if you think of this 12 as really being 3 times 4, I can divide a 3 and a 3 both by themselves and leave a 1 for a placeholder. Here I have 1x, here I have 2 x's, x times x. If I divide this by x, I leave a 1. If I divide this by x, I leave 1x left over. So on top of those fractions, I have a 4 and an x minus 5. That's my numerator. And my denominator is a 1 and a 1 and a 1. So it's simply going to be 4x times the quantity x minus 5. I'll leave that in this form. If you want to multiply it through, that's up to you. But that's the simplest form of that problem. Letter B, you're adding fractions. Got to have a common denominator. 7 and 4x, no common factors. So my common denominator is the product of both of those, which is 28x. So I want to rewrite each of these fractions over 28x. And then add the numerators and keep that common denominator. To make 7 become 28x, I do the bottom times 4x and the top times 4x. So the top becomes 16x squared. To make 4x become 28x, take the bottom times 7, the top times 7, the whole top. So it's going to be 7 times the quantity x plus 3. Everything gets multiplied by 7. So my answer is the numerators added together, 6x squared, plus, I'll multiply this through, 7 times x is 7x, 7 times 3 is 21, over my common denominator of 28x. And like a lot of rational expressions simplifying, they don't get very simple. So this is the simplest form of that answer, and that's what you get if you add those two original fractions. Adding, you need a common denominator, and that's it. And that's the end of skill 17.